Before you criticize me, I want to acknowledge that I take complete responsibility for what happened. However, it's important to recognize that if my wife hadn't taken certain actions, our story might have unfolded differently. Let me introduce myself as Adam, a 32-year-old man. My ex-wife and I were married for 2 years before our paths separated. The turning point occurred when I got sent to another country for a job transfer, where I met Megan upon arrival. Trying to adapt quickly, I went for a drink with a colleague. Little did I know that this chance meeting would lead me to Megan. Sitting alone at the bar, she had a welcoming vibe that attracted me. Being strangers in a foreign country, we started a conversation and shared our stories. Megan couldn't help but share with me and Jude, my colleague, the work difficulties she faced that day. Perhaps if Megan knew what the future held for us and the pleasant memories we could create, she wouldn't have revealed so much about herself that fateful night. After patiently listening to her for what felt like an hour, she turned the conversation to me. I told her about my recent job transfer to her country. Interestingly, something in my story intrigued her, sparking the beginning of our friendship. That's how our communication started. If Megan and I had stayed friends, it would have been a valuable life experience for me, alleviating the pain and feelings of betrayal I eventually experienced. As we got to know each other better, I learned that she worked as a nurse. Gradually, she began sharing details about herself, including her dream of becoming a spider farmer and owning a large spider farm in the future. How ironic that children's dreams sometimes fade. This moment reminded me of Megan's incredible sense of humor. I must admit that over the years of dating and communicating with different girls, Megan stood out as one of the most genuine people I've ever met. She had an amazing ability to see through people. It was only after getting to know her family that I realized where she inherited this quality from. Moreover, she showed great kindness and treated everyone with the same respect, regardless of their social status. Her compassion extended to both friends and loved ones, and she rarely spoke ill of anyone. I believe her character played a significant role in her successful career as a caregiver. In addition to being kind to acquaintances, Megan had an incredible ability to show compassion to strangers. It was one of those qualities that initially captivated me the evening we first met. One day, we went for an evening walk and decided to buy orange juice from the nearest shop. While waiting, an elderly beggar approached the counter, modestly asking for a bottle of water, saying he couldn't afford it. Personally, I thought the seller had the opportunity to politely refuse if she didn't want to help. But to my horror, she yelled at the man, suddenly stood up from her seat, and tried to make him leave the store. It was an unexpected and sad situation that I witnessed. Contrary to what I expected, Megan began accusing the sellers of mistreating an elderly person. She raised her voice, expressing her disagreement with their actions. Surprisingly, she went ahead and personally paid for a bottle of water for him. When I asked her about it, she explained that the person reminded her of a loved one, and she felt it necessary to intervene. Her compassion struck me as worthy of respect, especially considering the vulnerability and poor appearance of this man. As we prepared to leave the store that evening, murmurs from those around us suggested Megan might be acting for approval or to seem kind-hearted. In reality, these thoughts weren't far from the truth. Megan's act that night truly reflected her character. Even though our relationship ended, I'm sure that at that moment, Megan was just being herself. Moreover, kindness seemed to be an integral part of her family. The first day she invited me to dinner, I was amazed at the love and kindness her family showed me. If I wasn't familiar with them, I'd believe these are rare people unknown to the world. The way they accepted me made me feel like a member of their family. Megan's stepfather, Bob, was warm and open, and her mother, Lily, showed me such love that I wanted to be her biological son. As for Megan's half-brother, Max, he was wonderful. Thanks to their hospitality, it felt like I had been living in the country for a long time, and communicating with them never made me feel like a stranger. After a year of meeting Megan and her family, it became clear that I was deeply in love with her. My heart belonged to her alone, and I couldn't imagine being with anyone else. She became a significant part of me, and all I wanted was to live a happy married life with her and her family. When I finally confessed my feelings to Megan, it was an easy step toward a romantic relationship. She reciprocated, knowing my affection for her was strong and sincere. Over time, our life together became smoother. Fortunately, I already worked in one of Megan's country's prestigious organizations, so we didn't worry about financial issues. In less than 5 months, we carefully planned our wedding. On that momentous day, beloved family and friends gathered to celebrate with us, creating a wonderful, joyful atmosphere. It's nice to remember that when I first received the transfer notification, I had doubts, but I didn't know these changes would lead me to the love of my life and an unforgettable celebration. Despite my initial plans, I ended up married to Megan and met her amazing family. After the wedding, we started a life together, doing what we loved as a couple. I still can't understand why she ruined our happy marriage because it was truly wonderful, and those dear moments remain forever in my memory. Initially, Megan and I decided to postpone having a child because we felt unprepared. She valued our connection, encouraging us to enjoy each other's company and savor life's pleasures. She wasn't quite ready for the changes that come with pregnancy, like morning sickness and other symptoms. Still, I deeply respected her feelings. The fact that Megan, like her mother, constantly supported me as her spouse only increased my love for her. She perfectly understood the demands of my job and was ready to move whenever the company transferred me. Luckily, due to our marriage, I could apply for a permanent job in her country, and when the time came, I submitted my application. Fortunately, it got approved, relieving us of the worry about frequent relocations. One motivating factor was the immense joy I felt in the presence of Megan's family, surpassing what I experienced with my own relatives or other people. I couldn't put into words the emotions they stirred in me. I never felt this way as a child or with my family around. This strong connection made me do everything possible to keep it intact, especially after getting married. Megan's brother frequently visited our house, and I genuinely appreciated his presence. He became like a younger brother to me, and seeing his close bond with Megan made me realize how much he values his sister and wants to spend time with her. Additionally, I genuinely enjoyed hanging out with Max and often shared drinks with him. Sometimes our fun led to him staying overnight at our house when we might have had a bit too much to drink. Max and I developed a tradition of organizing a friendly competition. Whoever could drink more without getting too drunk would win the entire pot of money. This activity brought us great pleasure, and Megan sometimes joined us on those evenings when she felt like it. However, our happiness was overshadowed when Megan's stepfather passed away 2 years after the wedding, sending her into a deep depression. This pain wasn't hers alone. The entire family mourned the loss, especially her mother, who deeply loved Bob. I must admit, I also felt Bob's loss keenly and missed his presence in our lives. Watching his infectious laughter over dinner jokes, listening to his familiar stories about his grandparents surviving the World War, and enduring his terrible singing, made me reflect on the emotional grief Megan, her mother, and Max were going through. Honestly, Megan's father's passing had a profound impact on her, so much that she had to stop working to properly mourn. Throughout this challenging period, I stood by her side, offering constant support. I helped organize her father's funeral and supported her every step of the way. After the funeral, I expected Megan to return to her normal routine, but that didn't happen. On the contrary, her health deteriorated to the point where we all became concerned for her. She had known Bob since she was 13, after losing her biological father, and he had stepped in as a father figure. I could only imagine how difficult it was for her to lose him. I tried my best to cheer her up twice, but nothing seemed to work. Not knowing much about Bob, I often felt lost when Megan spoke about him, but I couldn't help but notice how her demeanor changed when Max visited, recalling memories associated with Bob. At these moments, her laughter filled the atmosphere, and her mood noticeably improved for the whole day. But as soon as Max left, she would retreat back into her shell. My serious concern for her well-being led me to make a decision. I asked Max to move in with us and stay until Megan regains her strength and finds solace. When making this decision, I was solely guided by the desire to see Megan recover and gradually break free from her emotional cage. The consequences of this choice still cause me deep pain, but I am grateful for making it, because it allowed me to discover a painful truth. If I hadn't asked Max to move in, I might have continued living in blissful ignorance, believing that Megan's love belonged only to me. As Max settled into our apartment, amazing changes took place. Megan's health gradually improved, and she began to recover as I had hoped. Initially, I assumed Max would stay with us for several weeks, but suddenly, his stay extended to 2 months. As I mentioned, the changes in Megan's condition were gradual but noticeable. She started regaining her vitality and became more engaged in life. No longer did she spend hours alone in our room, shedding endless tears. Watching her improvement filled me with joy, realizing that Max's presence played an important role in her recovery. Max, steadfast in enduring his grief, didn't cause me any fears. Soon, we resumed our usual games and even picked up our drinking competitions again. It felt like getting back to normal life, with a friendly and fun atmosphere. Max and I were engaged in our typical activities when Megan expressed her desire to join us. Despite having consumed several bottles, I couldn't resist her wish to participate. I allowed her to compete with her brother Max. However, as I grew tired of watching them drink and laugh without a clear winner, I decided to call it a night and head to bed. Maintaining a strict sleep schedule and needing to be at the office by 8 in the morning, I went to bed calmly, unaware of how events would unfold. Around 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up needing to use the bathroom. As I stumbled out of bed, still half asleep, the touch of cool tiles in the bathroom woke me up. It was then that I noticed strange noises coming from the living room. Initially, I thought it was just the TV, but upon closer listening, it became apparent it was something different. Silently leaving the room, I cautiously headed into the living room. To my amazement, I found Megan energetically dancing, beads of sweat glistening on her forehead. The warmth in the room left no doubt about what was happening. I stood speechless, trying to grasp the unreality of the situation, hoping it wasn't a figment of my imagination. When they hadn't yet recovered from the unexpected fun, I turned on the light, making Megan abruptly stop her movements. Both Megan and Max looked as if they had seen a ghost, their expressions revealing complete amazement at my presence. Megan started to explain, but her explanations became unnecessary. What I witnessed was completely understandable and left no room for doubt. Without hesitation, I kicked them out of my house. The shock was so strong that the next day I couldn't even go to work. Pulling myself together, I went to Megan's mother and informed her about Megan and Max's actions. The mother's deep disappointment was evident, and she couldn't even speak out in defense of her children. In her efforts to find support for me, a physical closeness developed between us. Although I'm not particularly proud of what happened, I couldn't help but admit that Megan's mother surpassed her daughter in terms of feelings. Surprisingly, I enjoyed every moment spent with her, and an affair began between us. It was unexpected given our age difference, but the connection was simply indescribable. The same week I found out about Megan and Max's betrayal, I immediately consulted a lawyer to start divorce proceedings. Initially, she hesitated to sign the divorce papers, thinking I might change my mind and forgive her, but I remained firm in my decision, unable to find the strength to forgive her. As a result, our marriage ended, and Megan and her brother remained unaware of my affair with their mother. The affair continued unnoticed, and I relished the moments we spent together, knowing it was temporary. Everything changed the day Megan unexpectedly caught us in the midst of our process on the kitchen table. She was both shocked and furious, venting her anger at her own mother. Unfortunately for Megan, her conflict led to her being kicked out of her mother's house. Of course, she probably felt the same sense of betrayal as I did. When her brother told her mother about our affair, she also kicked him out of the house in response. Deep down, I understood that our secret relationship was destined for a short existence and served as a form of revenge for both of them. If you're wondering how I'm communicating with their mother right now, the answer is no way. We realized our relationship was not destined to last, and we made the difficult decision to part ways. 3 years later, my ex-mother-in-law found her new true love. She's a good person and deserves better. I don't know if she communicates with her daughter and Max, and to tell the truth, I'm not interested in it. Let them live their lives. I am now married again and have 2 children, and these memories serve as a reminder to me to protect myself and my family from infidelity and betrayal. Second story. My wife and I, both 29 years old, began our journey together in school and continued through college and graduate school. While I was in grad school, my wife worked as a teacher at a nearby college, planning to finish her education after I completed mine. Now, happily married for 8 years, we've been together for a total of 10 years. I recently completed my training, marking the end of that journey. At the start of this year, I took a significant step in my career and am now moving to a new position in my company. I've recently signed an important contract with great significance. In a few months, my current salary of around $500 will significantly increase, 5 to 6 times more. This change will allow us to lead a lifestyle we've never experienced before. While I'm pursuing my dream job, my spouse is diligently preparing for higher education. We're both excited about the amazing future ahead. We were on the verge of reaping the benefits we worked hard for and patiently awaited. The fall semester was approaching, and my wife, having said goodbye to her job at a nearby college, was set to start her studies in 2 years. Once she completes her studies, we plan to move to our desired place and live the life we've long dreamed of, aligning with our desires. However, a couple of months before starting my new job, I noticed a hint of melancholy in my wife's thoughts. While I remained joyful about the upcoming changes, she seemed distant, displaying peculiar behavior indicating she was keeping some kind of secret. Even during moments when we watched our favorite show, she was occupied with SMS messages. Her face would distort into an unusual smile upon receiving a message, and I couldn't help but notice her constant anticipation of some message. Our plans for spending time together were frequently canceled, leaving me alone. She explained the cancellations by saying she needed to finish her schoolwork. Since early June, I observed her increasing reliance on these mysterious messages. On Memorial Day, while I was at work and she was home working on her school chores, curiosity drove me to leave an old mobile phone with a voice recording app in the house. Upon my return, I eagerly listened to the recording and was shocked by what I heard. It was a video call between her and a strange man having a candid conversation. They openly discussed plans to meet the following Friday after class, delving into closeness matters and making offensive remarks about me. It became evident that their bond was growing stronger as the conversation progressed. From the manner of their talk, I suspected this person might be another teacher from her college. Despite the poor recording quality, I used the Audacity program to eliminate background noise and highlight the voice. Now, I am absolutely sure they've been in a secret relationship for some time, given their comfort level during the conversation. Shockingly, in the process of listening, I discovered that he came to my house for an in-bed relationship with my wife. Initially, I had doubts and thought this idea was unlikely. I set up CCTV cameras to watch the front door and backyard, but soon realized the camera facing the front door couldn't capture those entering through that garage. I bought 3 cameras initially, but managed to install only 2. It took a week to discreetly hide one in the garage without his wife noticing. Maintaining secrecy was quite challenging. Finally, in May, I successfully installed a camera in the garage. I found no signs of their presence in the garage. In early June, we vacationed in a beach house an hour away. On the second to last day, my friends and I planned an evening beach walk to enjoy the sunset. Surprisingly, my wife last minute canceled the trip, leading me to suspect she might be meeting someone. I felt deeply saddened that she invited him during our vacation with friends, a special time for both of us. Lacking the necessary equipment to capture her words, I used my phone to silently record the conversation while walking with friends. Thoughts spun in my head that during my absence, my wife might be with someone else. I couldn't comprehend why she would risk our relationship so recklessly. We were on the verge of achieving our dream, and after countless years together, the thought of her betraying our bond was painful. Back at the beach house, I eagerly listened to the recording, hoping for clarity. I heard her open the door for someone, and soon the air filled with the sounds of closeness, accompanied by the voice of the person she was with. It was evident he entered unnoticed and patiently waited until everyone left the house before entering. Despite having indisputable evidence, I decided to delay the conversation with her to first find out the identity of this mysterious person. She sensed my distress, and knowing me well, realized I was trying to hide it. The anticipation became unbearable, leading me to access her phone for additional evidence. One night, while she slept peacefully, I couldn't resist the temptation to look through her messages. To my surprise, I found irrefutable evidence of her long-term secret relationship. The extent of their involvement exceeded all my initial assumptions and became obvious. It turned out the person she had a secret relationship with was one of her former students. Their relationship developed into a close one after crossing paths in class during the semester. I didn't know their meetings happened much more often than I could have imagined. The student quietly parked down the street, secretly entered the house through the garage, and they agreed to spend time together during my absence or when I had night work. She made up stories about being late at work to spend time with him. Additionally, they were secluded in her college office during normal school hours. It's shocking that sometimes they even engaged in activities in our bed. Discovering messages revealed their plans for the next 3 months, coinciding with the period when my new job required me to be away from home. Often, they discussed the idea of practically living together in our house for a significant part of the year, using the financial advantages of my higher income to fulfill their common desires. What struck me even more was that the driving force behind their relationship was my wife. Despite his hesitation, she convinced him that she would take charge of the situation. She explained that she wanted me to be happy and not raise suspicion so they could be together without obstacles. After reading the message, I was puzzled because it depicted a version of her that was unfamiliar to me, almost like a villain, and not the person I cherished and lived with for 10 years. The moment I saw these messages, the turning point came. I no longer wanted to rely on the camera for concrete evidence. With the audio recording and text at my disposal, I felt obliged to face the truth. When I played her the recording, she reacted genuinely. However, after the initial shock wore off, she started denying understanding what I meant. Even when shown photographic evidence of her messages, she stubbornly insisted she hadn't had an affair. It became clear she planned to continue this deceptive relationship, taking advantage of my financial opportunities and leading a secret life with her partner. We had a lengthy conversation, and in the end, she reluctantly confessed all her actions. Consequently, I'm currently in a state of deep confusion, unsure how to navigate this situation in my adult life. Throughout our life, I've always seen us as a close-knit family making decisions together. We consistently work towards a common goal, and we're incredibly close to realizing it. But now, I can hardly recognize her, despite being together for more than a third of our lives. Her recent admission about an affair with a student left me perplexed. She claims she ended the relationship and is willing to take all necessary measures to restore my trust. It seems unbelievable, especially considering the student is only 19 years old and hasn't even reached the legal drinking age. The lack of respect in our relationship became more noticeable when they engaged in close relationships at her workplace, in the car I provided, in our own garage, and even in our shared bed. To make matters worse, she sent him a message expressing her increased desire. It's hard to imagine how we could mend our relationship after unknowingly financing their affair. It's unpleasant to think she's jeopardizing her future, especially when she was supposed to enter graduate school in the fall with my support. Our carefully designed plan now destroyed. It seems she may not fully understand the seriousness of this situation. While she tries to prove she's no longer connected to him, I can't find anything that could fully restore my trust. Her past clever schemes to deceive me and her convincing lies to my face make it challenging to find something that could give me the necessary confidence. Therefore, it's becoming apparent that we should divorce. Although I'd like to confidently say I believe in our future, it's difficult for me to envision the way forward. We're currently in a situation where we're still together, knowing we need to go our separate ways. But her love affair has made our relationship even more complicated. The situation is further complicated by her family's strict religious beliefs, and there are fears they might sever ties with her due to her infidelity. Over the years, her family has witnessed my love and support, considering me a son, perhaps even closer to her parents than to their own. Moreover, her actions at work may lead to job loss since I've decided to withdraw support for her graduate studies and college debts. If we reveal the truth about her financial situation, it'll undoubtedly tarnish her reputation and possibly hinder her career prospects. The weight of these obligations can shatter her dreams, and I see it as my primary task to protect her from such destruction. Hence, I've chosen to keep this information from our friends, relatives, and acquaintances for the time being. Currently, we're trying to find a plausible explanation for why a seemingly prosperous and successful couple like us suddenly decided to end our marriage, especially in the absence of any visible problems. As we approach our life successes, local laws require us to remain officially separated for an extended period. Therefore, just last night, we completed the preparation of the initial draft of the necessary documents. I want to express my gratitude to her for agreeing to most of my divorce proposals. Throughout the process, I aimed to be fair and clear about dividing our property. Financially, I'm undoubtedly in a better position. It was crucial for me to have both our pets with me, and I'm happy everything went well. Currently, my wife hasn't hired her own lawyer, and unless we face an unsolvable issue, she doesn't plan to. While we have no serious disagreements now, having a lawyer for my interests puts me in an advantageous position. I'm still living in the house in a separate bedroom until we finalize the legal documents. This arrangement encourages open communication for any adjustments we might need, but I plan to move soon. Once all issues are resolved, I look forward to a quick resolution. Unfortunately, due to the upcoming separation and likely divorce, I can't fulfill my initial promise to support her graduate studies as my work starts soon. The divorce paperwork has made us both realize the reality of our situation. I suspect her tendency to narcissism and manipulation, mentioned earlier, might make her believe I'd never really leave. It's crucial for her to understand that people have the right to make their own choices, and I decided to leave our relationship. Despite any confusion from our affair or being stunned by the current situation, it's real. As soon as the separation period ends, I'll begin the divorce process. Throughout this ordeal, my friends provided incredible support and understanding. Both our families have shown great support, often agreeing with my point of view in our conversations. I've limited discussions exclusively to our separation, avoiding mention of the bright future I imagine. Fortunately, I received generous offers from several people who kindly offered me a place to stay while I figure out my next steps. Having this support and the opportunity to spend time developing a strategy and planning my future brings real happiness. I can't imagine how much more challenging the situation would be without such opportunities to help me re-enter the world of romance. A friend took me to a bar where I had the chance to start a romantic relationship, a completely new experience for me as an adult. During this journey, I was lucky enough to meet some genuinely charming people. I had the opportunity to take part in a social event where my ex-wife wasn't the center of attention, and it turned out to be an amazing experience. Thinking about this, I contemplated the necessary steps to move forward in my life. Self-care is a priority, so I started attending psychotherapy sessions and reviving neglected hobbies. I believe bright days are ahead, and I'm grateful for the continued support of loved ones.
Emily and Michael Thompson's love story began as a fairy tale. They met during their sophomore year of college, a time when both were full of youthful exuberance and unbounded optimism about the future. Michael was studying architecture, always sketching buildings and dreaming of constructing something that would stand the test of time. Emily, on the other hand, was pursuing a degree in psychology, fascinated by the complexities of the human mind and heart. They crossed paths at a campus event, and the connection was instant. Emily was drawn to Michael's quiet confidence and his ability to see beauty in the mundane, while Michael was captivated by Emily's warmth and her insightful nature. Their relationship blossomed quickly. Late-night study sessions turned into deep conversations about life, love, and their dreams. They explored the city together, discovering hidden cafes and quiet parks, making each place their own private world. Michael often surprised Emily with sketches of her or the places they visited, capturing their moments together in pencil and ink. Emily kept a journal, filling it with her thoughts about their relationship, each entry a testament to the deep love she felt for Michael. They were inseparable, and their friends often remarked on how perfectly they complemented each other. After graduation, it seemed only natural for them to get married. They were young, in love, and full of dreams. The wedding was a small, intimate affair, attended by close family and friends. As they exchanged vows, promising to love and cherish each other forever. Neither could have imagined that one day those vows would be tested in ways they were unprepared for. They moved into a charming little house in the suburbs, a fixer-upper that Michael eagerly took on as his first personal project. Emily, always supportive, filled the house with warmth and love, making it a home. Their future seemed bright, with plans for a family, career advancements, and a life filled with love. But as the years passed, the very foundation of their relationship would be shaken, and the fairy tale would slowly begin to unravel. It was early morning when Emily woke up alone, the sun casting a faint glow through the curtains of their once cozy bedroom. She instinctively reached for the other side of the bed, but it was cold, empty. Michael had left early again. This had become the new norm, her waking up to an empty bed, and the house eerily quiet. A sigh escaped her lips as she reluctantly got up, feeling the chill of the hardwood floor beneath her feet, a stark contrast to the warmth she used to feel in their relationship. As she made her way to the kitchen, she found the now familiar sight, a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter. "Early meeting, don't wait up, love, Michael." Emily picked up the note, staring at the words that once would have comforted her. The words were still there, "Love, Michael," but they felt hollow, lacking the sincerity they once held. She crumpled the note in frustration, feeling a pang in her chest. Where did things go wrong? She remembered the days when Michael would wake up with her, make them breakfast, and they would talk about their plans for the day. They used to sit at this very table, laughing, sharing stories, making plans for the future. Now it was just silence, the clinking of dishes, and the sound of the clock ticking, each tick a reminder of the growing distance between them. Emily glanced around the kitchen, noticing the little things that hadn't been touched in weeks. The stack of mail that Michael hadn't sorted through, the books he had stopped reading halfway, the dust gathering on the windowsill. Everything seemed to reflect the state of their relationship, neglected, distant, and cold. She missed the warmth, the connection they once shared. She missed the spontaneous dates, the late-night talks, the way Michael used to look at her like she was the most important person in the world. Now she felt like a stranger in her own marriage, living with a man who was physically present but emotionally absent. Determined to salvage what was left, Emily decided she would try harder. She would find a way to reconnect with Michael, to remind him of the love they once shared. But deep down, she feared that it might already be too late, that the distance between them had grown too vast to bridge. The evening air was thick with tension. As Michael finally walked through the front door, his shoulders slumped from exhaustion. Emily was already in the kitchen, putting the finishing touches on dinner. She had prepared his favorite meal, roast chicken with rosemary and garlic, mashed potatoes, and a side of steamed vegetables. She hoped that the familiar comfort of a home-cooked meal might spark something between them, a reminder of the simpler, happier times. Michael walked in, greeted her with a half-hearted kiss on the cheek, and mumbled a quick apology for being late. "Busy day at work, H." Like a knife, Michael wanted to comfort her, to tell her that everything would be okay, but he couldn't bring himself to say the words, because deep down, he wasn't sure if they would be. And so they lay there, side by side, but miles apart, each lost in their own thoughts, wondering if this was the beginning of the end. The decision came weeks later, after countless nights of restless sleep and endless days of strained conversations. The tension between them had reached a breaking point, and both Emily and Michael knew that something had to give. They could no longer go on like this, living in a house filled with silence, pretending that everything was fine when it was anything but. They agreed to meet at the park, the one where they had spent so many happy hours in the past. It was early autumn, and the trees were beginning to shed their leaves, the ground covered in a blanket of orange and gold. The crisp air carried a sense of finality, as if nature itself was mirroring the state of their relationship. Emily arrived first, sitting on the bench where they used to sit together, talking about their hopes and dreams. She looked around, taking in the familiar sights and sounds, But they no longer brought her the comfort they once did. Instead, they felt like remnants of a life that was slipping away from her, a life she could no longer hold on to. Michael arrived a few minutes later, his face etched with fatigue and sadness. He sat down beside her, leaving a small gap between them, a physical manifestation of the emotional distance that had grown between them. For a moment, they just sat there in silence, watching as the leaves fell gently to the ground, neither knowing how to start the conversation they both dreaded. It was Emily who finally spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Michael, I think we need to face the truth. We're not happy anymore, and pretending isn't helping." Michael nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on the ground. "I've been thinking the same. I don't want to hurt you, Emily, but I don't know if we can find our way back to each other. We've tried, but maybe it's time to let go." Emily felt a lump in her throat as she listened to his words. She had known this was coming, but hearing it out loud made it all the more real. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. Maybe it's time to let go," she repeated, her voice shaking. "We've tried, but sometimes love isn't enough." Michael reached for her hand, and she let him take it, their fingers intertwining for what felt like the last time. They sat there, holding on to each other, knowing that this was the end of their journey together. It was a moment filled with sorrow, but also a sense of acceptance. They both knew that this decision, as painful as it was the right one. The park, once a place of joy and laughter, now felt like a place of mourning. They shared one final embrace, not out of passion, but out of a deep sadness for what they had lost. As they pulled away, they looked at each other, tears in their eyes, knowing that this was their final goodbye. They stood up, each feeling the weight of the moment, and walked away in opposite directions, the distance between them growing with each step. The autumn leaves crunched beneath their feet, a poignant reminder of the life they had shared and the future that would never be. The finality of their decision weighed heavily on Emily as she walked home alone, her heart heavy with grief. The house, once a sanctuary filled with love and laughter, now felt like a hollow shell. Each step she took felt like a step further away from the life she had known, the life she had cherished. As she entered the empty house, the silence was deafening. The familiar creaks of the floorboards, the ticking of the clock, all felt like echoes of a life that was no longer hers. She looked around, taking in the remnants of their life together. The photos on the walls, the books on the shelves, the little knickknacks they had collected over the years. Each item held a memory, a piece of the life they had built together, now shattered. Emily walked into the kitchen, where she had spent so many mornings preparing breakfast for Michael, where they had shared countless meals and conversations. She sat down at the kitchen table, the same table where they had once planned their future together. But now, that future was gone, replaced by an overwhelming sense of loss. The tears she had been holding back finally came, spilling down her cheeks as she buried her face in her hands. She cried for the love they had lost, for the dreams that would never come true, for the life they would never share. The pain was unbearable, a deep, aching void that consumed her entire being. But as the tears flowed, Emily also felt a sense of release. The decision had been made, and there was no going back. She knew that this was the end of one chapter of her life, and the beginning of another. It was a chapter, Fee. The house, once filled with love and laughter, now stood as a testament to a love that had faded slowly but surely. And as Emily sat there, she knew that she would carry the memories of that love with her, even as she stepped into the unknown future. The love may have faded, but it would never be forgotten. The days that followed were a blur of emotions for Emily. She went through the motions of daily life, but everything felt hollow, as if a part of her was missing. The house, once filled with the sounds of two people in love, now echoed with the emptiness of her solitude. Each room held memories, reminders of what she had lost, and it was hard to escape the weight of those memories. Emily spent most of her time in the kitchen, the heart of their home, where she had always found comfort in cooking and baking. But now, the joy of preparing meals had vanished. She would often find herself standing at the counter, staring blankly at the ingredients, unable to muster the energy to create anything. The passion she once had for cooking, something that had brought her and Michael together, had faded along with their love. She tried to keep herself busy, filling her days with chores and errands. But the loneliness was always there, lurking in the background. Nights were the hardest. The bed felt too big, too empty. Without Michael beside her, she would lie awake for hours, her mind racing with thoughts of what could have been, what she could have done differently. But no matter how much she replayed the past, she knew that the outcome would have been the same. One night, unable to sleep, Emily went into the living room and sat down on the couch. She looked around at the familiar surroundings, the photos of her and Michael on their wedding day, the souvenirs from their trips together, the little mementos of a life they had once shared. The pain in her chest was almost unbearable, a deep aching sorrow that threatened to overwhelm her. She reached for one of the photo albums on the coffee table and opened it. The pages were filled with pictures of happier times, vacations, holidays, anniversaries. Each photo captured a moment of joy, a time when they had been so in love, so sure of their future together. But now, those moments felt like they belonged to someone else, another life that she could no longer reach. As she turned the pages, tears began to fall, one by one, onto the glossy photos. She tried to hold them back, but the floodgates had opened, and there was no stopping the torrent of emotions that came rushing out. She cried for the love that had faded, for the dreams that would never come true, for the future that had been lost. The weight of it all was crushing, and she felt like she might drown in her own grief. But as the tears flowed, Emily also felt a strange sense of relief. She had been holding everything in for so long, trying to be strong, trying to keep it together. But now, in the quiet of the night, alone with her memories, she finally allowed herself to feel the full extent of her pain. It was a cathartic release, a necessary step in her journey of healing. When the tears finally subsided, Emily closed the photo album and set it aside. She wiped her eyes and took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over her. She knew that the road ahead would not be easy, that there would be many more nights like this, filled with tears and heartache. But she also knew that she would get through it, that she would find a way to rebuild her life, one step at a time. The love she had shared with Michael was gone, but it would always be a part of her. It had shaped her, taught her, and made her who she was. And while it was painful to let go, she knew that it was the only way to move forward, to find peace and happiness once again. As she stood up and walked back to her bedroom, Emily felt a small flicker of hope in her heart. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it was there, a reminder that life would go on, that she would find a way to heal. And with that thought, she crawled into bed, pulled the covers up to her chin, and closed her eyes, ready to face whatever the future might bring. Thank you for being a part of Narrative Stories. Your support and engagement mean the world to us. We are committed to bringing you the best in storytelling. What kinds of stories would you like to see next? Share your thoughts in the comments below. He said, his tone weary. Emily forced a smile, trying to hide her disappointment. She had been looking forward to this dinner, hoping it would be a chance for them to talk, to reconnect. But Michael's mind seemed elsewhere, as it often was these days. They sat down at the table, the clinking of silverware, the only sound filling the room. Emily tried to make small talk, asking about his day, but the conversation felt forced. Michael responded in short, curt sentences, his eyes fixed on his plate. The once easy and natural flow of conversation between them had turned into a strained exchange of words, each more painful than the last. Desperate to break the tension, Emily brought up a memory from their past. Do you remember our trip to the coast? That tiny bed and breakfast, the one with the beautiful view of the ocean. We should go back sometime, just the two of us. Her voice was hopeful, filled with a longing to recapture the magic of their earlier days together. But Michael barely looked up from his plate. Yeah, maybe, he said distractedly. "I've got a lot on my plate right now, though." His response was like a dagger to Emily's heart. The lack of enthusiasm, the dismissiveness. It was clear that the trip meant nothing to him anymore. It was just another memory, lost in the sea of responsibilities and stresses that had taken over their lives. Emily swallowed the lump in her throat, forcing herself to keep it together. She felt a growing sense of frustration and helplessness. It was as if she was reaching out to someone who was already gone, trying to hold on to something that was slipping away. The man she once knew, the man she fell in love with, seemed to be a shadow of his former self, and no matter how hard she tried, she couldn't seem to reach him. Dinner ended in silence, the once comforting space of their home, now filled with an unbearable emptiness. Michael excused himself early, retreating to the living room to watch television, while Emily stayed behind, staring at the remnants of their meal. The connection they once shared, the love that used to fill their home, was now replaced with an overwhelming sense of loneliness. Emily wondered how much longer she could keep pretending that everything was okay, when it was clear that their marriage was falling apart. The nights had become the hardest part for Emily. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, she could hear the steady rhythm of Michael's breathing beside her. He was there, physically, but the emotional distance between them was palpable. The man she used to confide in, the man who once held her close and whispered sweet nothings in her ear, now felt like a stranger. The silence between them was suffocating, a constant reminder of how far they had drifted apart. Emily's mind raced as she lay there, replaying their recent interactions over and over. The coldness, the indifference, the way Michael seemed to have checked out of their marriage. She couldn't take it anymore. She couldn't keep pretending that everything was fine when it was clear that they were both miserable. With her heart pounding in her chest, she turned to him, her voice trembling with a mix of fear and determination. "Michael," she whispered, hoping not to wake him too suddenly. But he was already awake, staring at the ceiling, just like she had been. He sighed deeply, as if he knew what was coming. "What is it, Emily?" His voice was tired, weary, like a man who had run out of things to say. "What's happening to us?" she asked, her voice cracking with emotion. "I feel like we're losing each other, and I don't know how to stop it." Michael didn't respond right away. He closed his eyes, rubbing his temples as if trying to find the right words. "I'm just stressed, Emily. Work is demanding, and I'm doing my best to keep up. But I know things haven't been the same between us." Emily's eyes welled up with tears. "It's not just work, Michael. We don't talk like we used to. We don't laugh. We don't connect anymore. I miss you. I miss us." Michael finally turned to face her, his expression softening. He reached out to touch her hand, but his touch felt distant, almost perfunctory. "I miss us too, but I don't know how to fix this. Maybe we've just grown apart." The words hit Emily like a ton of bricks. Grown apart. It was what she had feared the most, the realization that despite all their efforts, they might be beyond saving. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she turned away from him, unable to hold back the flood of emotions any longer. Michael watched her, feeling a pang of guilt and sadness. He hated seeing her like this, hated that he couldn't be the husband she needed him to be. But he was exhausted from work, from the pressure of trying to hold everything together, and from the constant feeling that no matter what he did, it was never enough. The room was filled with the sound of Emily's quiet sobs, each one cutting through the silence.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
I am David Blackwood, 43 years old, an actuary by profession and, unfortunately, a husband facing failure due to recent events. Numbers have always been my refuge. Risk assessment, probability calculations, and statistical analyses form the foundation of my existence. I could easily tell you the chances of a 30-year-old non-smoker developing lung cancer or the likelihood of your house being struck by lightning. Yet, I couldn't predict the storm brewing in my own life. My wife, Sophia, was a high school art teacher. We met 15 years ago at a gallery opening, where her vibrant spirit and appreciation for the abstract contrasted with my comfort in the concrete. They say opposites attract, another cliché I'm reluctant to embrace, but it holds true for us. Our children, Ethan and Ava, who is 9, and Ethan, who is 12, embody the perfect blend of our contrasting personalities. Ethan is analytical and reserved, while Ava is creative and outspoken. I thought we had our family life figured out, a perfect equation. The party was Sophia's idea. "Let's celebrate life," she exclaimed, her eyes sparkling with an enthusiasm I struggled to grasp. "Invite everyone, colleagues, neighbors, friends. Let's make it big." I should have noticed then the desperation lurking behind her smile, the slight tremor in her voice. But I was too preoccupied with calculating catering costs and determining the optimal guest-to-space ratio for our modest home. Little did I know, as I prepared invitations and arranged seating, that this party would become the catalyst for unraveling the carefully woven fabric of our lives. When the evening arrived, our home was transformed into a buzzing hive of activity. The air was thick with the scent of hors d'oeuvres and the sound of ice clinking in glasses. I stood in the corner of our living room, nursing a gin and tonic, observing the scene unfold like a detached spectator. Sophia flitted from group to group, her laughter echoing across the room. She wore a deep green dress that complemented her auburn hair, looking more vibrant than I had seen her in months. I should have felt pleased, but something gnawed at the edges of my contentment. "Quite the shindig, Thorne," exclaimed William Carter, slapping me on the back. William was a colleague, a fellow actuary known for his loud ties and even louder opinions. "Didn't think you had it in you." I forced a smile, replying, "It was Sophia's idea." "Ah, the missus," William nodded sagely. "Always knew she was the fun one." I watched as Sophia engaged in an animated conversation with Henry Morgan, our new neighbor. Henry had moved in 3 months ago, a divorced physiotherapist with a passion for running marathons and growing organic vegetables. He leaned in close to Sophia, his hand briefly touching her arm. A twinge of something stirred within me. Jealousy? Unease? I pushed it aside, attributing it to social anxiety. Just then, Ethan appeared at my elbow, his face a mask of preteen discomfort. "Dad, can I go to my room? This is boring." "Sorry, bud. Your mother wants us all here. Family unity and all that." I ruffled his hair, earning an eye roll in response. As the night wore on and the crowd thinned, I found myself in the kitchen, loading plates into the dishwasher, grateful for the mundanity of the task. The house had grown quieter, but not silent. Murmured conversations and occasional laughter drifted from the backyard. It was Ava who found me first. Her face was pale, her eyes wide with confusion and something else. "Fear? Dad," she whispered, tugging at my sleeve. "I think you need to come outside." A sense of dread built in my chest as I followed her. As we stepped onto the back porch, I saw Ethan standing rigid, staring at something beyond the rose bushes Sophia had planted last spring. And then I saw them, Sophia and Henry, their bodies intertwined behind the very roses she had nurtured just months ago. The scene was unmistakable yet surreal. My analytical mind began to dissect the tableau before me. The angle of Henry's arm, the arch of Sophia's back, the way her green dress pooled around her waist. Time seemed to stretch and contract simultaneously. I was acutely aware of my children's presence, as well as the few lingering guests who had stumbled upon this moment. Then the sound of a glass shattering pierced the air, breaking the tableau. Sophia's head snapped up, her eyes locking onto mine. For a brief instant, she looked like a stranger, flushed, disheveled, her eyes bright with an emotion I couldn't name. But then something shifted in her gaze. Not shock, not horror, but relief? "Well," Sophia said, her voice steady as she disentangled herself from Henry, "I suppose we can drop the pretense now." I felt a harsh, humorless laugh bubble up in my throat. "Pretense? Is that what we're calling our marriage now?" Henry stood awkwardly, trying to straighten his clothes. He didn't look ashamed, just resigned. "I told you this wasn't the way, LYD, he muttered. "Wasn't the way for what?" I asked, my voice sounding calmer than I felt. Sophia squared her shoulders, looking more like herself than she had in months. "To make you see, David, to make you understand that this, us, it's been over for a long time." Her words hit me like a physical blow, and I struggled to process what she was saying. "So this spectacle was for my benefit?" "For all of us," Sophia replied, gesturing vaguely. "I've tried talking to you, David, for months, years even, but you never hear me. You're always so wrapped up in your numbers, your probabilities. I needed you to see something you couldn't quantify." I became acutely aware of our audience, our children, the remaining guests. "Everyone out," I said, my voice tight. "Party's over." The guests filed out quickly, murmuring awkward goodbyes and avoiding eye contact. William lingered for a moment, concern etched on his face. "David, if you need anything?" I nodded curtly, not trusting myself to speak. Soon, it was just the four of us, our family, now fractured beyond recognition. "Kids, go to your rooms," I said softly. "But Dad," Ethan started to protest. "Please," I cut him off. "Your mother and I need to talk." They went, reluctantly, leaving Sophia and me alone in the debris of our imploded life. Sophia stood before me, her face set in determination. The woman I had loved for 15 years, the mother of my children, now seemed like a stranger wearing my wife's face. "Why like this?" The question escaped me, small and broken. She sighed, running a hand through her disheveled hair. "Because you understand data, David. Cold, hard facts. Well, here's a fact for you. I've been unfaithful. Here's another. I'm not sorry." Her words cut deeper than I could have imagined. I had always prided myself on being a good provider, a stable presence. But it seemed that stability wasn't enough. "How long?" I asked, dreading the answer. "With Henry." 3 months, Sophia replied matter-of-factly. "But I've been unhappy for years. You just never noticed." As the implications of her words sank in, a terrible thought struck me. "Sophia," I said, my voice hoarse. "The kids, are they?" For the first time, real anger flashed in her eyes. "Don't you dare, David. Don't you dare use your precious probabilities to question that. They are yours in every way that matters." But the seed of doubt had been planted, and I knew it would grow into something ugly and unavoidable. "I think you should leave tonight," I said, surprising myself with the steadiness of my voice. "Stay wherever you want. We'll figure out the rest later." As she walked past me to pack a bag, I realized that this was just the beginning. The real storm was yet to come. The days following the party blurred together in a haze of sleepless nights and robotic routines. I took a leave of absence from work, citing a family emergency. William, to his credit, didn't ask questions. Ethan and Ava moved through the house like ghosts, their eyes hollow and accusing. I tried to talk to them, to explain, but how could I when I barely understood it myself? On the third day, as I mechanically poured cereal for the kids' breakfast, Ethan broke the silence. "Are you and Mom getting divorced?" Ethan asked, his voice cracking on the last word. I set the cereal box down, gripping the edge of the counter. "I don't know, buddy. It's complicated." "It's not complicated," Ava piped up, her voice hard. "Mom's a cheater. We should hate her." "No, Ava," I said, surprising myself with the firmness in my tone. "We don't hate your mother. What she did was wrong, but hate doesn't solve anything." "Then what does?" Ethan asked, looking up at me with eyes that seemed too old for his face. I didn't have an answer. Sophia called that evening. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message 5 times. "David, we need to talk. About the kids, about everything. I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but there are things you need to know. Things I should have told you long ago. Please call me back." I didn't. Instead, I found myself sitting in our home office, surrounded by family photos and financial documents. 15 years of life, reducible to images and numbers. I picked up a framed picture from our wedding day. Sophia's smile was radiant, her eyes fixed on me with a look I now struggled to define. Was it love? Or had I simply seen what I wanted to see? As I set the photo down, my eyes fell on a medical bill from years ago. A routine checkup for Ethan, nothing out of the ordinary. Except for the date. 9 months before Ethan's birth. A cold feeling settled in my stomach as I began to calculate, to cross-reference dates and events. Sophia's words echoed in my head. "I've been unhappy for years. You just never noticed." How much had I missed? How many signs had I overlooked, too focused on my precious probabilities to see the human element? With shaking hands, I reached for my phone. The testing facility was sterile and impersonal, much like the process itself. A cheek swab, a form to fill out, a hefty fee to pay. The technician, a young woman with kind eyes, assured me the results would be ready in a few days. "May I ask," she said hesitantly, "is this for a paternity test?" I nodded, not trusting my voice. She smiled sympathetically. "I see a lot of angry people come through here, looking for ammunition. But you? You just look sad." Her observation caught me off guard. "I suppose I am," I admitted. "I thought I knew my life. Now I'm not sure of anything." As I left the facility, I felt a strange mix of dread and anticipation. Part of me wanted to race back in, to stop the whole process. What if the results confirmed my fears? Could I love Ethan and Ava any less, knowing they might not be mine biologically? The weight was excruciating. I threw myself into work, into household chores, anything to keep my mind occupied. Sophia's calls became more frequent, more insistent, but I continued to ignore them. Finally, the email arrived. Your results are ready, it said, with a link to view them online. My finger hovered over the mouse, trembling slightly. I clicked. The page loaded, a jumble of scientific terms and percentages. But there, at the bottom, in bold letters, probability of paternity, 99.99%. Relief washed over me, so intense it was almost painful. They were mine, both of them. The doubts that had plagued me, the fears that had kept me awake at night, all unfounded. As the initial wave of emotion subsided, a new feeling took its place. Shame. How could I have doubted? How could I have let Sophia's infidelity taint the love I had for our children? I reached for my phone, dialing Sophia's number before I could talk myself out of it. David. Her voice was tentative, hopeful. We need to talk, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. About the kids, about everything. There are things I need to know, things I should have asked long ago. There was a pause, then a soft exhale. Yes, she said. We do. Thank you for calling. As I hung up, I realized that this conversation wouldn't solve everything. The betrayal, the hurt, the years of unspoken resentments, they were still there. But for the first time since the party, I felt a glimmer of something like hope. Not for our marriage, which I was beginning to accept was over, but for understanding, for closure, for a way forward that wouldn't destroy the family we had built. Even if it looked different now, I looked at the framed photo of Ethan and Ava on my desk. My children, undeniably, irrefutably mine. Whatever came next, whatever difficult conversations and decisions lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain. I would do whatever it took to protect them, to help them through this. It was time to stop hiding behind numbers and face the messy, complicated reality of human emotions, starting with a long overdue conversation with Sophia. The conversation with Sophia was as difficult as I'd anticipated. We met at a neutral location, a quiet cafe downtown, away from curious neighbors and the memories that haunted our home. I want a divorce, I said, my voice low but firm. Sophia nodded, unsurprised. I expected as much. I am sorry, David, she said, not for wanting to leave, but for how she had gone about it. Why, Sophia? Why not just tell me you were unhappy? She sighed, stirring her untouched coffee. I tried in my way, but you never seemed to hear me. I felt invisible. With Henry, I felt seen. I swallowed the bitter taste in my mouth. And the kids? Have you spoken to them? Her face fell. They won't talk to me. Ethan hung up on me, and Ava sent me a text saying she hates me. Despite everything, I felt a pang of sympathy. They're hurt and confused. Give them time, will you? Her voice was small. Give them time, not keep them from me. I met her eyes, seeing the fear there. I won't keep them from you, Sophia, but I won't force them to see you either. That has to be their choice. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of lawyers, paperwork, and difficult decisions. We agreed on joint custody, but the children's refusal to see Sophia complicated matters. Our lawyer, a pragmatic woman named Isabella Cruz, advised us to give them space. Forced visitations will only breed more resentment, she explained. Let them come around on their own terms. Dividing our assets proved less contentious than I'd feared. Sophia didn't fight me on keeping the house. She'd already found an apartment closer to her school. We split our savings, our debts, our lives neatly down the middle. It felt surreal, reducing 15 years to numbers on a spreadsheet. The hardest part was watching Ethan and Ava struggle. Their anger at Sophia manifested in different ways. Ethan became withdrawn, throwing himself into his studies with an intensity that worried me. Ava, on the other hand, lashed out. Her grades slipped as she picked fights at school. I arranged for them to see a therapist, Dr. Lily Chin, who specialized in helping children through divorce. After their first session, she pulled me aside. They're carrying a lot of hurt, Mr. Blackwood, she said gently, but they're also worried about you. They need to see that you're okay, that you're moving forward. Her words stuck with me, prompting a realization. I'd been so focused on managing the practical aspects of our separation that I'd neglected my own emotional healing. 6 months after the party that changed everything, I found myself sitting in my own therapist's office. Dr. Lucas Gray, a man with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor, had been helping me navigate the emotional minefield of divorce. You've made progress, David, he said, leaning back in his chair. But I sense there's something still holding you back. I nodded, struggling to find the words. I keep thinking about probabilities, The likelihood of infidelity in long-term marriages, the statistical success rates of second marriages, the impact of divorce on children's future relationships. I can't turn it off. Dr. Gray smiled slightly. You're using numbers as a shield, David. It's safer to think about statistics than to confront your feelings. His words hit home. I'd spent so long hiding behind data that I'd forgotten how to simply feel. What do I do? I asked, feeling lost. Start by allowing yourself to experience emotions without analyzing them. When you feel angry, be angry. When you're sad, let yourself cry. It's okay not to have everything figured out. Taking his advice to heart, I began to open up more to Ethan and Ava. We started having weekly feelings check-ins, where we'd each share something we were struggling with. It was awkward at first, but slowly, we began to heal together. Sophia and I settled into a cautious co-parenting routine. The children still refused to stay at her new place, but they progressed to brief, supervised visits. It wasn't ideal, but it was progress. As for me, I was learning to rediscover myself outside of my roles as husband and father. I joined a local hiking group, started taking cooking classes, and even went on a few dates. Nothing serious, but steps toward a new future. 1 year after the party, I stood in our backyard, looking at the spot where I discovered Sophia and Henry. The rose bushes were in full bloom, their beauty untainted by the memory of that night. I realized then that I no longer felt the sharp pain of betrayal when I thought of Sophia. Instead, there was a dull ache of what might have been, mixed with a growing sense of acceptance. Ethan appeared beside me, his lanky frame now nearly as tall as mine. You okay, Dad? He asked, his voice deeper than I remembered. I smiled, putting an arm around his shoulders. Yeah, buddy. I think I am. Ava joined us, slipping her hand into mine. Can we order pizza for dinner? She asked, a hint of her old mischief in her eyes. As we headed inside, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. Our family looked different now, reshaped by pain and healing, but we were still a family, bound by love and resilience. The future was uncertain. No amount of statistical analysis could predict what lay ahead. But for the first time in a long while, I was okay with that uncertainty. We would face it together, one day at a time. Sure, Ava, let's get your favorite. How about extra cheese? I replied, smiling at her enthusiasm. As we gathered around the kitchen table to plan our order, I realized that the love we shared was stronger than the scars we carried. Each day was a step toward a new chapter, and I was ready to embrace it, no matter where it led us. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.
David Carter, 35. A dedicated software engineer working abroad, David has always prided himself on his loyalty and commitment to his marriage. He sacrificed personal comfort to provide financial stability for his wife and future family. Quiet and analytical, David doesn't act impulsively, but can be ruthless when betrayed. Elena Carter, 32. Outgoing, ambitious, and undeniably charming, Elena thrives on attention. Recently, she launched an online jewelry store that has gained significant traction. While she appears loving, her self-centered tendencies and desire for admiration reveal her true priorities. Liam Taylor, 28. A yoga instructor with a chiseled physique and a smooth-talking nature, Liam has a history of seducing his clients. His charisma hides his manipulative tendencies and lack of respect for boundaries. Maggie Peterson, 30. David's childhood best friend and now a skilled divorce attorney. Maggie is fiercely loyal to David and becomes his confidant and guide as he navigates the fallout from Elena's betrayal. Visual. David stepping off a plane, holding a small gift box in his hand, his face lighting up with anticipation. David couldn't contain his excitement as he landed at the airport. For months, he had been working overtime on a major international project. The effort had paid off. He had been promoted to a lead engineer position that allowed him to work remotely. Finally, he could come home to Elena, the woman he adored. He stopped by a local florist on the way home and picked up a bouquet of Elena's favorite lilies. In his pocket, he carried a small jewelry box containing a diamond bracelet, a token of love and congratulations for her recent business success. Visual. David approaching the house at dusk. the golden glow of lights visible through the windows. The house looked warm and inviting as he approached. David quietly unlocked the door, eager to surprise Elena. The aroma of lavender, her favorite scented candles, filled the air. He imagined her joy at seeing him and the life they could now build together with him working from home. Visual. David's face shifting from excitement to confusion as he hears laughter upstairs. As David entered, he noticed a pair of unfamiliar men's shoes near the door. A slight pang of unease hit him, but he brushed it off, assuming a friend or client had stopped by. Then, faint laughter echoed down the stairs. Not just any laughter, but Elena's carefree giggle. It was accompanied by a man's voice. David's heart began to race, and curiosity drove him forward. Step by step, he ascended the stairs, the voices growing louder. Through the cracked bedroom door, David saw Elena lying on their bed with Liam. The intimacy they shared was undeniable. David froze, his breath caught in his throat. His mind raced. How long had this been going on? Had his absence pushed her away? But no, excuses didn't matter now. The betrayal was real. Instead of bursting in, David backed away quietly, his emotions a mix of anger, heartbreak, and cold determination. He knew one thing. This would not end with an argument. Visual. David sitting at the dining table, calm but with a piercing intensity in his eyes. Later that evening, Elena came downstairs, her demeanor casual, as if nothing had happened. She smiled at David and kissed his cheek. "You're home early? What a surprise!" David didn't flinch. He smiled back, masking his true feelings. Over dinner, he asked her about her business, their mutual friends, and her yoga sessions. She answered each question casually, never suspecting that he knew. Finally, David leaned back in his chair and said, "You seem so happy, Elena. I just have one question. How long has it been going on with Liam?" Elena's face paled, her fork clattering onto her plate. "What are you talking about?" "Don't insult me with lies," David said, his tone eerily calm. "I saw you. Today. With him." She burst into tears, sobbing uncontrollably. "David, I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I love you. It didn't mean anything." David stared at her, his expression unreadable. "Mistakes happen once, Elena. This was a choice, and choices have consequences." Visual. David sitting at his computer late at night, a montage of him gathering evidence. David didn't act impulsively. Over the next few days, he pretended to forgive Elena while secretly plotting his revenge. She tried to rekindle their relationship, but her attempts felt hollow to him. Using the access credentials he had for Elena's jewelry store, David started collecting information. He found invoices for lavish gifts she had sent Liam and emails filled with flirtatious banter. Visual. Elena's phone buzzing with notifications as her expression turns from confusion to horror. One morning, Elena woke to find her online store flooded with fake bad reviews, accusing her of selling counterfeit. With fake bad reviews, accusing her of selling counterfeit jewelry. Her inventory was gone, the website wiped clean. Panicked, she tried logging in but found herself locked out. She ran downstairs to David, holding her phone. "David, something terrible has happened to my store. Someone's hacked it." David looked up from his coffee, his expression calm. "That's awful. Any idea who might want to hurt you?" When her frantic accusations turned toward him, he didn't deny it. "Yes, I did it. You see, I built that site for you, just like I built our life together. You destroyed one, so I destroyed the other." Visual. A bustling yoga studio where whispers ripple through a crowd. David wasn't finished. Using the evidence he had collected, he sent anonymous messages to Liam's other clients, revealing his affairs with married women. The yoga studio, once bustling, emptied overnight. Liam became the subject of ridicule and judgment. his reputation in tatters. Elena, now ostracized, found herself the target of gossip and disdain. Visual: David walking into a new apartment, smiling for the first time in weeks. With the divorce finalized, David moved to a new city. His first call was to Maggie. "It's over," he said. "Now I can finally move forward." Maggie replied, "You deserve happiness, David. Never let someone take that from you again." David focused on his career and self-growth. He joined new social groups, rediscovered hobbies, and started building a life free from the shadow of betrayal. Visual: David writing a letter, the golden glow of sunset filtering through the window. David wrote one last letter to Elena. "Trust is earned through actions, not words. When you broke that trust, you didn't just lose me. You lost the life we built together. I hope one day you understand the value of what you had. Goodbye." David sealed the letter and left it behind as he walked out, the horizon before him a symbol of his newfound freedom. Thanks for watching. What do you think of David's revenge? Did he go too far, or was it justified? Let us know in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more gripping stories like this one. See you next time. Ending quote. Healing begins when we choose ourselves over those who broke us.
Welcome to Lost Relation Chronicles.
My wife, who is usually wonderful, recently became friends with a woman I believe is a bad influence. Not in a condescending way, but more like the saying, "Lie down with dogs, get up with fleas." I never commented on her friend's immaturity or extreme man-hating behavior because it didn't directly impact me until recently. A few months ago, my wife began pressuring me to take on more responsibilities around the house. To be clear, we already split the chores and childcare. Admittedly, she had a larger share since she stays home, but I handled most of the cooking, both breakfast and dinner, while lunch was her responsibility for herself and the boys. I also took out the trash, did the laundry, deep cleaned the bathrooms weekly, and helped with our son's homework. Despite this, she insisted that I wasn't contributing enough and pushed for me to do more. It seemed like she expected all the household duties and child-rearing to fall on me. Attempts to discuss what she wanted from me went nowhere, and during those talks, she mentioned divorce multiple times, which felt manipulative. The situation came to a head when we were out with friends, and she claimed that I never helped around the house and treated her like a house slave. Her words? I was furious but stayed silent that night. The next day, I approached my boss and requested reduced hours due to stress so I could take on more at home. I took over all the household tasks, making breakfast, preparing lunches for the boys, driving them to school, cleaning the entire house, and washing all the dishes multiple times a day. My wife was ecstatic and even boasted to her friend that she finally wore me in. She didn't lift a finger during that period. After about a month of me handling all the household responsibilities, my wife started asking why we weren't going out on dates anymore and complained that her nails were growing out and needed to be done. I explained that we needed to cut back on non-essential spending to keep our budget balanced, but suggested we could have a movie night at home and I could paint her nails myself. She wasn't happy with that option, so I asked if she would consider getting a part-time job to help cover those extras. Her reaction was as if I had suggested something completely outrageous. She then asked if I could take on more shifts at work to pay for her additional expenses, using the phrase, "be a man," which I found pretty insulting. I then suggested that we go back to sharing the household responsibilities, and that's when she realized the connection between my recent actions and our conversation. She accused me of being manipulative and even claimed I was engaging in financial abuse. I stood my ground for a while, but started to question whether my actions were underhanded. Now, I'm reflecting on whether I handled the situation the right way. To answer a common question, I love my wife deeply, and she is an incredible mother. Before she became close to her new friend, we were truly happy together as far as I could tell. For those wondering, I did not restrict her from using our joint credit card except for essentials. She has her own card, and we share one bank account. I usually booked her nail and hair appointments because she dislikes making phone calls, which is why she noticed their absence and asked why I wasn't planning dates. While she could have used the card without telling me, Spending $300 or more on a night out would have strained our budget. Here's more about my wife and our relationship. Before we got together, she always wanted to be a stay-at-home mom. I hesitate to mention this because, while her 2 boys aren't mine biologically, I see them as my sons. Being a single mother was extremely challenging for her, especially since working outside the home was overwhelming. I understood this to some extent, having experience as a single father with a son of my own. At that time, I was focused on advancing my career and was more than willing to take over the financial responsibilities to lighten her load at home. Some people might say, "You're paying to raise another man's children," but I don't appreciate that comment. Those boys are my kids, and no matter what happens between their mother and me, I hope they always know that. As for how things have changed, it may sound mundane, but it's significant to me. When we first got married, she would give me shoulder and back massages every day after work and have my favorite music playing when I came through the door, even though she doesn't like bluegrass. She would make my coffee while I got dressed and always picked up extra crunchy peanut butter at the store, even though I'm the only one who likes it. We used to have movie nights with the kids twice a week and reserved one night just for us as a date night. I have trouble sleeping and prefer not to take medication for it, so she would make sure the bed was ready for me, with a heating pad turned on and my pajamas laid out. She would run her fingers through my hair until I fell asleep and wake me up gently instead of using an alarm, knowing it put me in a better mood. None of these gestures were things I asked for. She did them because she knew I liked them. She hasn't done some of these things lately. At least it was until I reduced my work hours. That change marked the point when she stopped doing any of those thoughtful things entirely. Right now, she's angry, and I'm left lying on the couch feeling regretful. I personally believe she's being stubborn. It's less about genuinely wanting me to take over everything and more about proving that I would if she demanded it. She has a complicated history with men, which is why I tend to be more understanding when these conflicts arise. Her history isn't something I'm comfortable discussing, but trust me, what happened in her past was not her fault. I'm a former addict myself, though I didn't have children at the time, which makes this even more challenging. See my last post for more context. Recently, during a major argument, my wife admitted to using substances for several months and has agreed to check into rehab. We're currently arranging this step now. I'm struggling with how to explain this to our kids in a way that won't make them judgmental or resentful of their mother, or worse, push them into a similar mental state that I'm in. Lying to them, which is what my wife wants, doesn't sit right with me, but I'm at a loss for an alternative that won't hurt them or their perception of her. I haven't slept much since learning all of this. My wife's substance use included clonazepam and Adderall, which she had been buying from her friend. She also admitted to having tried coke and other prescription drugs, but clonazepam and Adderall were her most frequently used substances. Yes, this is the same friend who influenced her views, which I initially thought were rooted in extreme misandry. It turns out that wasn't the case. Instead, it was more about heavy drug use. I've told her that she must cut off all contact with this friend, or else she will face divorce along with everything else. For context, our kids are 9, 12, and 14. See my profile for more details, but here's what recently unfolded. I was driving my wife to the rehabilitation center we had agreed upon. During the drive, she lashed out, yelling about how I was humiliating her by explaining the situation to the boys and making her message her friend, who was also her dealer, to end their connection and substance use. She insisted she didn't want to go, called me controlling, and accused me of being a monster. She said that threatening her with divorce and taking primary custody of the kids was an extreme and irrational move. I absorbed her anger until I reached a breaking point. I shouted back, telling her that the woman I married would have never allowed a pillhead anywhere near her sons, and that her current behavior disgusted me. I said I wasn't sure she understood how seriously I was considering leaving, not because of her addiction, but because of her behavior. I reminded her that she had brought drugs into our home, despite me being a former addict and with our children present. I admitted that I was starting to resent her for it. I told her she was becoming like her own mother, whom she had always cried about, and that she was fortunate I intervened before our boys suffered the same fate. It's difficult to admit, but seeing her realization sink in, seeing her face as the weight of her actions hit, felt satisfying. She continued shouting that I was abusive, but it seemed more reflexive than genuine, especially as she was still in tears. I'm planning to consult a lawyer. I don't want to divorce her, but I'm not sure our relationship can survive this in a healthy way. The fact that I don't regret yelling, that I even felt justified in it, makes me question whether staying married is truly best for either of us. Before going further, please understand that this is a vent. I am not normally like this, but I need to purge these thoughts before moving forward. I discovered she was cheating. Her drug-dealing friend sent me videos of her dancing and grinding on some guy who looked rough and unkempt. I am utterly shattered. The boys are staying with my mother for a few days, and I'm taking the next week off work to process this. I've never felt rage like this in my life. The friend who sent the video did so with a message implying I was expendable to her. Well, that free ride ends now. I hope she finds a way to get on Medicaid for her treatment, because I am done. I saved the video and will be consulting a lawyer as soon as possible. I haven't told anyone yet because I need to proceed carefully. Thank goodness my parents insisted on a prenup with a specific infidelity clause, which I once thought was harsh. I had never been cheated on before, and now I'm on the verge of losing my mind. I genuinely didn't think she could sink to this level. I'm struggling to cope, haven't kept food down, and last night I drank for the first time in over a decade. I had to dump out the rest this morning because I realized I'm teetering on the edge. My boys cannot have both parents ending up in rehab. For clarity, here's a breakdown of the situation with the kids. 2 of my 3 sons are my stepsons, whom I adopted. They never had an involved father as their biological dad was an unreliable presence. My youngest son is biologically mine from a previous relationship with a girlfriend who is no longer in the picture and does not wish to be involved. My boys are 9, 12, and 14. When I met my wife, she held down 2 jobs, though they were both low-paying ones, and I was considering helping her find something better. The drug issue stemmed from her buying from a female friend, who was also the connection to some of the men she had affairs with. I was unaware of my wife's addiction until she admitted it and went into rehab. While she was there, I received undeniable proof that she had been unfaithful multiple times. This led me to initiate the divorce process, not only because of the infidelity but due to the compounded stress that nearly drove me back to my own addiction. The overwhelming strain made it impossible for me to even think about being in the same room with her, let alone pursue mediation or counseling. During our last private encounter, I raised my voice and felt justified in the moment, which further confirmed to me that our relationship was not healthy enough to continue. I now understand that my actions were harmful and could be considered abusive, which is yet another reason why I shouldn't be in a relationship with this woman. I moved her belongings to the guest room, except for the pills I found hidden in her bedside table. I photographed them in their hiding spot and then flushed them. I also removed her from my bank account and credit cards. I spoke to my sons and explained the situation without vilifying their mother, doing my best to help them understand. They seemed to grasp what was happening. I want to make it clear that I have no intention of abandoning them. Regardless of blood, they are my sons. When she returned home, the boys were away at camp, a birthday gift from my mother. She was silent, eyes downcast, from the moment I picked her up from the rehab facility until we got home. I led her to the guest room without saying a word, and she broke down crying before even stepping inside. Over the following weeks, I let her settle in. I kept a neutral distance, but I could tell she sensed something was coming. I wanted to be fair and give her time to adjust to life outside rehab, remembering how overwhelmed I felt when I left rehab and everything came at me too fast. Finally, I asked her to sit on the couch and told her I didn't believe we could continue being married, and I wanted a divorce. Her reaction was unexpected. She said nothing, only nodded and cried softly as I spoke. I explained that my intention was not to hurt her, but that our marriage couldn't continue, and it would be best for us to focus on being good parents. I assured her I wouldn't force her out and that, thanks to our prenup, the divorce should be straightforward. I encouraged her to begin looking for a job and said I would help her find an apartment once she was employed. At that, she stood up and walked to her room without a word. I let her be because I assumed she was overwhelmed and that the conversation could wait. She didn't come out for dinner, and I debated whether I should leave her alone or not. Eventually, I knocked on the door to see if she was hungry. Long story short, she had smuggled pills into the house, or maybe had a stash I didn't know about, and she overdosed. She was dead for several minutes during the ambulance ride, and now she's in a medically induced coma. The doctors aren't sure how much damage has been done to her brain, and I'm absolutely crushed. I feel like a monster, like I'm the scum of the earth. I can't help but think I should have said nothing, kept it all inside, and stayed. I feel responsible for what happened, and it's eating me up inside. I may not love her the way I used to, but I still feel incredibly sorry for everything she's been through. This is killing me. I haven't told my sons yet. I'm debating whether to wait until they come back from camp so they don't have to carry this burden while they're away. Where's her family? It's not my story to tell, but she doesn't have much family left. She's estranged from the ones who are alive. She has other friends, but I'm not sure which ones were enabling her. They all know what's going on, though. I've messaged all her friends except the dealer, and she knows I know because of the messages she sent me. She hasn't visited her in the hospital, possibly because she thinks I would throw her out, which, to be honest, I would be tempted to do. A couple of her other friends have been visiting her constantly. She's no contact with her mother, ironically, because of her mother's addiction and mistreatment of her. The rest of her family constantly insisted she should reconnect with her mother, even taking the boys to her mother's house without her permission twice. For clarification about the kids, all of our children are from previous relationships, and I've adopted the two oldest, who aren't biologically mine. At the time, I wanted to adopt them while she was in rehab, but my therapist advised me to reconsider, so I did. When I discovered the cheating, I was so angry I wanted to take her belongings to her dealer's house and leave them there, but I knew that would be wrong. I realized once my anger wore off, I would regret it. Now, all I want is to get the divorce started and finished as quickly as possible so I can begin to rebuild my life. I didn't want to give her false hope, and I could tell she knew something was coming because I couldn't even stand her touching me anymore. It physically made me ill. If I had known she was going to overdose, I could have closed my eyes, gritted my teeth, and let her do whatever she wanted. But even now, after everything she's done, I know that's not feasible for me. I still find myself wanting to start arguments, to yell, but I know I'm not strong enough to be in a relationship with someone who's hurt me that deeply. Someone who has disrespected me, my home, and my children to that extent. She took my own past experiences with drugs so lightly that she brought them into my home, under my nose, in front of my kids. I've reached the point where this is all the kindness I can afford her anymore. For my own mental health's sake, I took the advice of some friends and went to get my boys to see if they wanted to visit their mother. I explained the situation as best as I could, in an age-appropriate way, and asked if they wanted to see her. They all agreed, but the oldest only wanted to go to support his brothers. I'm concerned about the anger he's building toward his mother, and I do plan to talk to him about it. But I don't want to tell him how to feel or make him think his emotions are wrong. I was already in the process of getting them into therapy, but I'll be speeding up that process now. As for the cheating, there have been multiple pictures and videos of her dancing with and being inappropriate with men. My wife passed away. I know many people assumed that she was manipulating me or trying to make me stay with her, but honestly, it didn't matter if that was the case. The moment she woke up, we both started crying and talking. We didn't stop for days. After that, she went back into rehab for a while. When she came out, we both did couples therapy and individual therapy. She seemed happier. She seemed like she was getting better. I had hoped that the chaos was over and that we could finally be happy again. I didn't update sooner because I was scared of how people would react. I don't handle confrontation well, and I wasn't sure how to explain things. She promised me that if there was anything she needed to talk to me about, she wouldn't hesitate, and everything was going well. But now, when I reflect on everything, I wonder if there were signs she might relapse or that she hadn't truly stopped using. The answer is no. There was nothing. Nothing except the fact that she overdosed at a friend's house while I was working and passed away on their couch. Her friend didn't even want to call an ambulance at first. It was the friend's boyfriend who had to convince her to do so. I don't think either of them, her friend or her boyfriend, were arrested that day, but I know from the news that she was picked up a couple of months ago for selling. Everyone kept telling me I should go to the police, and honestly, maybe I should have, but with the way things work with them, I don't think it would have helped much. Since then, I've been drifting terribly. I picked up smoking again, something I quit before I got married because she hated the smell. I hate it now, too, the smell. But the hand-to-mouth motion feels nice. My sons are in therapy and are handling the loss as well as could be expected. The younger two talk about her a lot, but the eldest is mostly angry. I'm grateful he doesn't seem to want to say anything to his brothers about it, but I always let him tell me what's on his mind, even when it breaks my heart. I know that people here probably have an idea of who my wife was, but one thing that you could never deny was how much she loved our boys. They were her pride and joy, everything to her. I miss her. I miss her so much. It feels like a death rattle to breathe. There's never music when I get home anymore, and I hate it. I hate the quiet so much that some days, before I go inside, I just sit in the car and cry because I know she won't be there. I haven't even been able to clean out her side of the bathroom yet. It hurts too much to think about getting rid of her perfume or her toothbrush. I haven't felt like writing for obvious reasons, but there's something important I feel I need to say now. Valentine's Day is tomorrow. On the way home from work recently, I caught myself calculating flower prices before I remembered that I have no one to give them to, unless I put them on her grave. I remember being frustrated at how expensive roses had gotten, and now that seems so silly. I just wanted to say that if you have someone you love, please cherish them. Do something extra nice for the person you love tomorrow, for my sake. Nothing crazy, but maybe dance around the living room to your song. or read to each other something soft or sweet to let them know you're real and really, really there. I know that's so cliché and corny, and if Alex were here now, she'd probably tease me about it. But sadly, the old scumsucker were always right. Life is short. Isn't that a kick in the butt? It's hard for me to defend her, but that was the first thing my therapist told me when I asked about my sons. Defending her to them wasn't going to help. All I can do is let them talk. My eldest is the one who really rages about it, but I know the younger two will eventually get there. I feel this angry, helpless kind of pain, and it hurts so much to think about because if she had just talked to me, I could have helped her, and maybe she'd still be here. I know I made mistakes, too. I'm a former addict, and I get it. It was like everything was so good again for a while. We were sleeping in the same bed, going on dates. My mind just keeps screaming, why would she do this? I hate that. I tried so hard not to love her anymore while she was alive, but it didn't work then, and it hurts even more now. When others are mad or say negative things, I still want to defend her, to explain every little reason why she did what she did and why it wasn't all her fault. But in the end, it doesn't matter because she's gone. She won't be here to see that defense, to care that I changed minds. She won't be here to be respected or disrespected. It feels pointless, but I still want to, and it makes me feel like an a-hole. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.